Hello and welcome to the mentor briefing for the autumn and spring, covering the PGCE first placement and the BA2 placement. The programme will look at the QTS programme developments, building on students' reflections, supporting students' personal professional development and in particular looking at language development. Sukta website updates things that will be of interest to you, whether you're a new user or a continuing user, and then looking at the students' understanding and input that they've had before they come to you in schools. There then will be a few updates and reminders, the mentor to-do list then at the very end of the programme. In the QTS programme at the moment, there are lots of things going on in response to the Donaldson and Furlong reports, and we're in the process of piloting different activities that will give us a really clear understanding of what we want to have as a partnership to present as our re-accreditation application next year. So we're working within a professional learning partnership, and you will have all had the invitation to join that PLP. There are opportunities to get involved in several activities that are outside the placements, and this is something that you can get in touch with either myself, Catherine Bleasdale, or with the partnership office to show that you're interested in doing something. At the moment, we're carrying out lots of different activities that will hopefully show us what we want in the future. We're also working on the co-construction of provision, and schools and university staff are involved in that, and we're working across the primary and secondary phases as well. The Athrova has been launched, and that is the Institute of Education that we are working within. And the idea is that we're bringing together different activities within the Faculty of Education and Communities in order to serve the initial and further education of teachers in Wales. So in terms of the PGCE programme, the developments that have occurred to date are that the way that we've begun students' PTE, professional teaching experiences, has changed. So we've worked with a small number of schools within the partnership, and we've together created a programme of 7-day visits in the same school. The students have been going in larger groups, so the smallest group of students has been 6 and the largest has been 20, and they've been working in the schools in at least pairs. Some have been working in small groups in the classroom. The focus has been heavily on collaboration, so collaboration of planning, of observation, of sharing, reflections and so on. And there's a greater collaboration between the teachers and the students as well. And our main focus in our new developments is to make it more explicit to the students the links between university and school-based experiences, and so the bridging ideas are at the foremost point of our understanding. For the BA2, there's been a similar activity for the students. They're working now within a larger module. So we've linked the principles of pedagogy with the professional teaching experiences so that the students are made to look at those links between the theories and the practice. And the module focuses on AFL, and then in next term it looks at thinking skills. And in this term the students have had a visit where they will identify practice in terms of AFL, so looking at good practice in, again, a smaller number of schools, and the students have gone to those schools in larger groups and then they've shared that experience in a marketplace in the university. And the marketplace has included students from different year groups, students from different programs, and also school staff from a range of schools as well. So the idea is, again, that we're bringing the school and the university together to give the students that understanding, explicit understanding, that the two things do fit together. In terms of placements then, the PGCEs are out for their first placement, and I think that's really significant that we remember that they're on their first experience as a teacher. So although many of the PGCEs have had experience as LSAs and as HLTAs, they haven't been in the position of teacher. So in our support of them, we need to remember that that's the case and not to expect them to be able to do things. Particularly, I think with the PGCs, we think that they are mature, they've had lots of experiences, life experiences, and so we expect them to do better maybe than some of them feel they can do at this point in time. Confidence isn't always as high as we expect in the teacher role. So the PGCEs are going to be out from the 7th of November until the 14th of December, and then they're back with you on the 11th of January and until the 16th of February. They have to cover both phases, so one before Christmas, one after Christmas, and they're building up to a 50% workload, which means that they do 50% teaching within the amount of time that you have available. So obviously with Christmas coming up, the amount of time available may be limited, and we don't expect that you would give up your teaching time in order for them to have their teaching time. So you split it half and half so that the students have a good experience to get to grips with the phase that they're teaching, but that they're not encroaching on your teaching time. The BA2, they're out as well on the 7th of November. They finish on the 15th of December, and they don't come back to you until after half term in February. So there's a gap there where they're back in university, and they also have to cover both phases, and they're building up to 50% workload. And again, they are quite new to this because the provision for the year ones last year, so this cohort that's now in year two, was for them to have a couple of day visits each week. And for some of them, that meant that they didn't gain quite as much confidence in their teaching ability as they may have done if they'd been out for a longer and more sustained block. So we're aware of that in the provision that they've had, and we're keen that you recognise that as well. So they will have had both phases, they will have had experience of foundation phase and Key Stage 2. They would have been teaching up to 40% of a timetable, but they would only have been out on Mondays and Tuesdays for 6 weeks in both phases. So there's a limit there of time. One change that we've made in relation to the PTE becoming part of the module for pedagogy is that we've included a mark for the placement. So the summative assessment judgments will now be used to create a mark for a 70% assessment. The other 30% of the module will be assessed by an assignment, a usual essay, but this giving marks to the judgments will mean that the students will come out with a classification based on how well they've done on placement alongside that assignment. And so you can see here from the examples that the students will gain a first class mark if they get 3 excellents and 2 goods. That gives you 72%. If they get 5 goods, they are working at a 2-1 level. If they get 2 goods and 3 adequates, they're working at a 2-2. If they get 5 adequates, then they're slap bang in the middle of a 3rd class degree. The reason why I'm telling you this really is just to forewarn you that the students recognise this as a change, and so they may be a little bit anxious that if you've given them a judgment of unsatisfactory in their formative assessment, that's going to be having an impact on their marks. It doesn't. The overall judgments come from the summative assessments. We assess them in exactly the same way as we always have done, and then we in the university will then sort of crunch the numbers assigned to each of those judgments. So just to reassure the students that the formative assessments are just that, they're formative, and they are leading the students to get to the best possible judgments at the end of the placement. So the summative assessment isn't written until the end of the placement in March, and that's what we'll use as the basis of our mark crunching. In terms of supporting the students then, as I said earlier, the idea is that the students are sort of developing their skills, and so we need to give them that support, particularly at the beginning of the placement, to give them the confidence to build to teaching the whole class and to taking that 50% of the time. The feedback that we've had already and our sort of analysis of formative assessments and summative assessments shows that the way that these students are being mentored is effective. They're being given regular oral and written feedback that are linked to the QTS standards, and they are being exemplified. So the message there is thank you very much to all of you for giving your time and providing this information to the students. The most effective targets are clear and concise, and provide an explanation of what the progress will look like. They're written or provided in student-friendly language, and they are time-related. So if you have something that you really need to be developed in a short space of time, please give them that notification. Tell them when you want to review and when you're expecting them to have made progress. That bottom bullet point saying to be patient, really just to remember that they are developing, and so there may be times when they're not really sure how to proceed, and you may need to reiterate what you want from them in order for them to actually show that progress. In terms of language development then, we are keen as a national priority for the students' personal language to be recognised and its development within the school context to be recognised. So we ask that you carry out, or between all of us who are assessing, so either the mentor or the university tutor, to assess at least one literacy-based session, and then within the formative and summative assessments to make reference to language use. And we're particularly asking you to make reference to first language use and second language use. So in terms of the English medium students, to recognise their use of English, and then to recognise their use of Welsh as a second language or an additional language. So that's maybe a slight change on the way that language box is being completed on the formative assessments and summative assessment forms. In terms of the way that we can develop the students' language, although you may feel a little bit awkward about doing this, the students are aware that you will be recognising any errors in their oral and written language and asking them to take notice of that and to make changes to either their oral language or the written language in accordance to your recommendations. And there is a need for us to be really proactive in this and to raise any concerns with the mentor, the senior mentor or the tutor, in order that we can address and support any students who may have particular needs in this area. The PTE file then is the evidence that the students collect and the evidence of their progress throughout time. And the plea here is that you monitor regularly their PTE file. We're looking at the standard of the contents, the various aspects of paperwork that they have to complete, and also their language use. But we don't expect you to be going through the file with a fine-tooth comb and marking every single page. But if you could keep an eye on how they're developing their their paperwork. It's not the be-all and end-all. It's not more important than their practice, but it is important that they are maintaining the file. And if they get to a point where they are behind in their file, and that sometimes will have an adverse effect on the way that they're developing in the classroom. In terms of reflective practice, the students are developing their reflective practice, and again, it's thanks to you that they are doing that. So thank you for making specific comments regarding their reflective abilities in the formative and summative assessments. Thank you for being aware of the ARC model, the form that they complete on a daily basis. And thank you for recognising where they're doing that well and making suggestions where maybe they're not being quite critical enough in the way that they come to conclusions and form targets. And thank you as well for checking in with them on their weekly reviews and using their ARCs, using their daily reflections to help them in identifying the next steps for them. In order to continue to develop their reflections, we are asking you now to draw attention to them, to the way that they create their targets, and support them to create specific advice as to how they'll develop their skills. So rather than just saying the children lost interest in the introduction, they need to be saying why, and then thinking, what can I do about it? So what if the children need to be interested in the introduction, or I need to change my introduction? How are you going to do that so that they are really clear and specific, so that they have more opportunity to reach those targets? So if you could support them there and recognise in their planning forms that they are drawing attention to the targets and applying those targets to the specific lessons that they are planning in the future. Also, with the PGCE, the students have been shown how to carry out a video reflection. So within their 7 days of visit, they've had an opportunity, or a good proportion of them have had an opportunity to use film to recognise particular aspects of their practice that they want to further develop. And this can be carried out within the context of your filming policy within school. So you may ask them to use your devices and to observe the film on the premises. They've completed this within a peer review session, but if they're working independently, or if they're able to work alongside the mentor, the class teacher, then that would be really useful so that they get support in their reflections. The idea is that they identify a really short snippet that will allow them to hone in particularly on something very, very specific, and then to have some suggestions, or to make suggestions themselves as to how to improve. Once they get over the initial shock of, ooh, my voice sounds funny and my bottom looks big in this, then they tend to recognise how to look in on practice and to recognise what they could do to make changes to that practice. Okay, so in terms of the students' input to date, the BA2 students have been back in university for 5 weeks, and they have also obviously had a year 1 input. They've had experience, as I've said previously, in both foundation phase and Key Stage 2, that 2-day-a-week approach that we took last year. They've had input on personal literacy and numeracy development, and they've completed initial audits. They've had input on curriculum studies, so they've covered the curriculum in both foundation phase and Key Stage 2. This year they're looking at additional needs, so they've had 5 weeks worth of that, and they've also had introduction to the digital competence framework. On that as well, they have got access to the hub, so they are able to access the resources there using their own login details. The same goes for the PGCE. They also have had input on the digital competence framework, and they have access to the hub. They've been in university for 8 weeks, and obviously they're new to this programme. They've covered principles of pedagogy, where they've looked at theories of teaching practice and theories of learning. They've had input regarding the curriculum, foundation phase and key stage 2. They've had this opportunity to work collaboratively, to plan and to observe, and they've had preparation sessions where they've been shown the different pieces of paperwork and how to complete them. Okay, so looking at the website and some of the feedback that we received from you in the past year or so has been used to make updates and hopefully to make positive changes to the website. The reports now show who has completed them. So any that have been completed by the school come up as a mentor form, and any that have been completed by a university tutor come up as tutor. And that happens automatically depending on who has logged in. The thing to say there is if you've got several students in your school, it won't show exactly who has completed the form because you're using the same login details. So the reason why that is useful is because if you're looking for the tutor's form to have a look at what the tutor has written about the student, obviously then you don't have to trawl through all of the forms to find the actual form that you've got. In terms of the additional adult, it gives you the opportunity to give a number. It also allows you to add year groups so that you've got mixed age classes. That's really useful. It gives you an opportunity to see exactly the year groups that are included in your class. It also helps us with data collection because it means that we can very clearly state which classes have had different year groups and so on. So that gives us better data. The calendar, this is a particularly annoying aspect. The calendar now shows the current date, so you can recognise whether you're completing the form on the day that you have observed the lesson, or you can move on from that date. If you haven't used it before, the previous version of the form for some reason wasn't showing the accurate date. The other quite annoying aspect was the joint observation used to ask for a date. If you hadn't completed a joint observation, you weren't able to just say no, but now you can. It's just a tick, yes or no, and so you click to say that you have carried out a joint observation. Just on that point, if you want to carry out joint observations internally, that'll be great. But the second observation that the tutor undertakes will be a joint observation with a mentor from the school, and that will be also an opportunity for us to discuss between us where we feel the student will come out in their summative assessment. So the summative assessment will look at the foundation phase and key stage 2 and look at the way in which they have overall made progress, and so that's the discussion that we would have at that point. Okay, your to-do list then. So the induction is that opportunity for the students to settle into the class. They're told to spend as much time as they can with the pupils, and observing whilst supporting the pupils in their work, so they can pick up on the individuals and the way that they work, and also the way that you support them as teachers in the class. What's very important is that they know immediately they enter the school their procedure for safeguarding and child protection, and that they are aware of the person that they need to approach if they have anything to share. There is a card that they are given that gives them a procedure that we believe is very straightforward and will ensure that they carry out the necessary tasks and the necessary aspects of collecting information in order to be able to pass it on to the teacher who's been designated as the person with the responsibility for safeguarding in the school. In terms of monitoring student progress, as we've spoken about already, if you could check the PTE file on a regular basis and sign the various forms that they have to complete. I think lots of schools now set up an end of week review process, meeting time, where either the students will come to one senior mentor or one mentor, or they work with their class mentor to check that everything's in place. It may be that they do that during a meeting that also includes the planning for the following week. That's up to you as a school, but it's worth keeping that regular contact. And the end of week review, which is completed by the student, gives you a really clear understanding of where they feel they are and how they're making progress, and that can be very useful to you as a mentor in supporting them and moving them forward. In terms of assessment then, for both the BA2 and the PGCE, the school is asked to complete 2 observations per phase, which means that over the 2 phases, the school will complete 4 assessments and the 1 summative assessment at the end of the placement. The tutors, the university tutors, will come out once in each phase. That means that they will complete 2 observations over the whole period, which means that by the end of the period, each student will have 6 observations uploaded onto the website. Again, this has been mentioned already in terms of literacy, but in order to keep in line with the national priorities, we ask that of those 6, at least 1 session refers to a literacy focused session, and 1 of them is a numeracy focused session. And that is so that we then can collect data referring to the students' personal use of language and number, and then the way that they apply that in the classroom. So we're making those connections within the data. In terms of the experience, if there are any questions, please don't hesitate to be in touch with either myself, Catherine Bleasdale, or the faculty office. Christine Rees is your connection there. And as I said at the beginning, thank you very much for supporting the students in this.